The baby shouldn't have been there. Mincio knew that the moment she heard the soft, babbling echo down the marble hallway outside Mr. Kang's office, the one place in the entire estate where silence was law. Her hands froze on the polished cloth. Her breath caught. She'd been cleaning the mahogany side table in the executive wing for 3 minutes, which meant she had 7 minutes left before the next security rotation. 7 minutes to be invisible. 7 minutes to finish and disappear. The babbling grew closer. No. She abandoned the cloth and moved fast, her cleaning uniform suddenly too loud against her skin, her rubber-soled shoes squeaking once against the polished floor. She rounded the corner and her stomach dropped. There he was. Jiho, her 10-month-old son, crawling with terrifying speed and confidence down the center of the hall, his chubby hands slapping the white marble, his knees pumping like pistons, his face lit with pure joy. He was wearing the little gray onesie with the bear on it, his black hair stuck up in the back. His gummy smile stretched wide when he saw her. "Jiho," she hissed, dropping to her knees and scooping him up in one motion. "How did you?" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. She knew exactly how. Mrs. Lim, the elderly cook who watched Jiho during Mincio's shifts, had fallen asleep again. She'd promised it wouldn't happen, but Jiho was clever. He'd learned to unlatch the baby gate. And now he was here, in the East Wing, in the part of the mansion where the help did not bring children, where the cleaners did not make mistakes. Where Mr. Kang's office sat behind 12-foot double doors at the end of the hall. Mincio clutched Jiho to her chest and turned to leave, her pulse hammering in her ears. She made it 4 steps before she heard it. The doors opened. Not a creak, not a groan, just a smooth, expensive whisper of hinges that cost more than her yearly salary. She stopped walking. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. "Who's there?" The voice was quiet, even. It didn't rise at the end like a question. It didn't need to. Mincio closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. Then she turned, keeping Jiho pressed against her shoulder, his little fingers curling into the fabric of her uniform. The man standing in the doorway was exactly as the other staff described him. Tall, lean, wearing a black suit with no tie, the collar of his white shirt open at the throat. His face was sharp, almost beautiful, but wrong in a way she couldn't name. His hair was dark and pushed back. His eyes were darker. They didn't blink. Kang Tijun. Owner of the estate, owner of half the district, if the rumors were true. The man the other maids wouldn't name out loud. The one Mrs. Lim called the quiet one, which Mincio had learned meant the most dangerous one. He looked at her the way someone looks at a stain on expensive fabric. "I'm sorry." The words came out too fast. Mincio bowed her head, not deep enough to jostle Jiho, but low enough to show deference. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Kang. He got away from the kitchen. It won't happen again. I'll leave right now. I'll..." "Stop talking." She stopped. Jiho, however, did not. He twisted in her arms and made a high, happy sound, his little hand reaching out toward the man in the doorway, reaching for him like he was something wonderful. Mincio's heart cracked in half. "Please," she whispered. "He's only a baby. He doesn't understand. I'll take him. I'll go." Kang Tijun didn't answer. He stepped forward, each footstep silent and deliberate, and Mincio realized with cold clarity that he wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at Jiho. His eyes moved over the baby's face with the same precision he might use to examine a contract. Clinical, thorough. Then his gaze dropped to Jiho's hand, the one still reaching, fingers opening and closing like he was trying to grab the air between them. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Kang Tijun did something Mincio would replay in her mind 1,000 times and never fully understand. He lifted his hand, slowly, and extended one finger toward Jiho. The baby grabbed it immediately, his whole fist wrapping around the man's index finger, his face breaking into a drooly grin. He squeezed. He babbled again, a soft string of nonsense syllables. Kang Tijun stared at the tiny hand holding his finger. Something changed in his face. Not softness, not exactly, but a shift, a pause, like a door inside him that had been locked for years suddenly rattling on its hinges. How old? He said. 10 months, Minceo's voice shook. Sir. Name. Jiho. Kang Tijun's gaze finally lifted to hers. And for the first time since she'd started working here, she saw something other than cold efficiency in his expression. She saw curiosity. Why is he here? She swallowed. I'm a single mother. I work the evening shifts. The cook watches him, but he's fast. He got out. It won't happen again. Kang Tijun looked back at Jiho. The baby was still holding his finger, now trying to pull it toward his mouth. You work in this wing, Kang Tijun said. Yes, sir. Alone? Yes. And no one knows he's here. Mincio hesitated. That felt like a trap, but she nodded. Kang Tijun studied her for another long moment. Then he looked down at Jiho again, and this time, he did something even stranger. He crouched. Slowly, smoothly, until he was eye level with the baby in her arms. Jiho's eyes went wide. He stopped babbling, and then, impossibly, he smiled. Kang Tijun tilted his head, just slightly. He's not afraid, he said. No, sir. He should be. Mincio's throat tightened. I know. Kang Tijun studied Jiho for 5 more seconds. Then he stood, his expression unreadable again, and straightened the cuff of his sleeve. Go back to work, he said. She blinked. Sir. Finish your shift. Keep him quiet. He turned and walked back into his office. The doors closed behind him without a sound. Mincio stood frozen in the hallway, Jiho still gripping her uniform, her mind racing. She should have been fired. She should have been thrown out. She should have. Jiho laughed. She looked down at him. His face was flushed and happy, his little hand opening and closing like he was waving goodbye to someone who wasn't there anymore. And Mincio realized something she couldn't explain and didn't want to think about. Jiho had liked him. The most dangerous man in the house. And somehow, impossibly, he had liked Jiho back. Mincio didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small room on the staff wing's 3rd floor, Jiho curled warm and heavy against her side, his breathing soft and even. The window was cracked open. Rain tapped against the glass. The estate was silent in the way expensive places always were, no creaking pipes, no thin walls carrying other people's conversations, just silence and space and the weight of money in every corner. She stared at the ceiling and replayed it. The way Kang Tijun had crouched, the way he'd looked at Jiho, the way his voice had gone quiet when he said he's not afraid. He should have fired her. She'd violated protocol, brought a child into the executive wing, interrupted him. Any other employer would have had security escort her out within minutes, her belongings in a box, her references burned. But he hadn't. He'd told her to finish her shift. And she had. She'd cleaned the rest of the east wing with Jiho strapped to her back in the carrier she kept hidden in the supply closet, her hands shaking the entire time, waiting for security to appear. They never did. When her shift ended at midnight, she'd slipped back to her room, fed Jiho, and put him to bed. Now it was 4 a.m, and her mind wouldn't stop. Keep him quiet. Not * get rid of him, not don't bring him again. Keep him quiet. Like Kang Tijun had made a decision, she didn't understand yet. Jiho stirred beside her, his little hand patting her arm twice before settling. She pressed her lips to the top of his head and closed her eyes. She needed this job. The pay was triple what she'd made at the hotel. The room was free. The food was free. She could save money. She could build something. She could give Jiho a chance at a life that didn't start and end in survival. She couldn't lose it. Which meant she couldn't let Jiho wander again, couldn't risk it, couldn't. A soft knock sounded at her door. Mincio sat up so fast her vision blurred. Jiho made a small questioning sound but didn't wake. She slid out of bed, her bare feet silent on the floor, and crossed to the door. Her hand hovered over the handle. "Who is it?" she whispered. "Security." Her stomach dropped. She opened the door a crack. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway, his expression neutral. She recognized him, Lee, one of the senior guards who worked directly under Kang Taejun. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just looked at her. "Mister, Kang wants to see you." The words hit like cold water. "Now," her voice came out too thin. "Now. My son is asleep. I can't." "Bring him." Minseo stared. "What?" "Bring the baby. Mr. Kang's orders." Lee turned and walked away before she could respond, his footsteps silent on the carpet. Minseo stood frozen for 3 seconds. Then she moved. She dressed in her uniform with shaking hands, lifted Jiho carefully from the bed and wrapped him in a blanket. He barely stirred. She followed Lee down the hall, down 2 flights of stairs, through corridors she'd cleaned 100 times but never walked at this hour. They stopped outside Kang Taejun's office. Lee knocked once. A voice from inside said something she couldn't hear. Lee opened the door and stepped aside. Minseo walked in. The office was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate gardens, rain streaking the glass in silver lines. The furniture was dark wood and leather. A desk sat in the center, massive and clean, with a single lamp glowing warm against the surface. Bookshelves lined one wall. A bar lined another. Kang Taejun sat behind the desk, writing something by hand. He didn't look up. "Close the door." Minseo did. The sound was too loud. Jiho shifted in her arms but stayed asleep, his face pressed into her shoulder. Kang Taejun set down his pen. He leaned back in his chair and looked at her. At Jiho, then back at her. "Sit." There was a chair across from the desk. She sat, her arms tightened around Ji. Kang Taejun watched her for a long moment. His face gave away nothing. Then he spoke. "How long have you worked here?" 3 months. Before that, a hotel downtown, housekeeping. And before that, a restaurant, I waited tables. Father. She blinked. Sir. The baby's father. Her throat went tight. Gone. Dead or gone? Gone. Kang Taejun's eyes didn't move from hers. Family. No. No one. No one. He nodded slowly, like he was filing the information away in a place she couldn't see. Then he stood and crossed to the bar. He poured water into a glass, walked around the desk, and held it out to her. She stared at it. "You haven't slept," he said. "I'm fine." "You're shaking." She was. She took the glass, drank. The water was cold and clean, and she hated how good it felt. Kang Taejun returned to his desk but didn't sit. He stood beside it, arms crossed, his gaze shifting to Ji. "He's quiet," he said. "He's tired." "Does he cry?" "Sometimes, not often." "Why?" Minseo hesitated. "I don't know, he's just calm. He's always been calm." Kang Taejun tilted his head. "Like me." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. He moved closer, not fast, not threatening, just deliberate. He stopped 2 feet away and looked down at Jiho's sleeping face. He grabbed my hand, Kang Taejun said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." His voice didn't rise, but it cut. "I didn't say I minded." Minseo's breath caught. Kang Taejun crouched again, the same way he had in the hallway. His eyes were level with Jiho's face. He studied the baby the way someone might study a painting, carefully, thoroughly, like there was a mystery there he intended to solve. "He's small," Kang Taejun said. "He's 10 months. Fragile. He's stronger than he looks." Kang Taejun's gaze flicked to hers. Something almost like amusement moved through his expression. Almost. "You think I'll hurt him?" "No," she said it too fast, then quieter. "I don't know." "You should." "Should what?" "Think I'll hurt him. Everyone else does." Minseo swallowed. "He's a baby, you wouldn't." "Why not?" "Because you crouched." The words came out before she could stop them. Kang Taejun went very still. "Explain." "People who hurt things don't," she struggled. "They don't crouch, they don't make themselves smaller, they don't care." Yes. Kang Taejun stared at her. For the first time, she saw something crack in his expression. Not softness, but recognition. You're smarter than you look, he said. Thank you. She didn't know if it was a compliment. He stood, walked back to his desk, pulled open a drawer and removed a keycard. He held it out. Take this. She didn't move. What is it? Access to the East Wing, childcare room, third door past the library. Minseo's heart slammed against her ribs. I don't understand. You need somewhere to keep him during your shifts. That room is soundproof, private. No one will bother you. Why would you? Because he crawled into my office. Kang Taejun set the keycard on the desk between them, and I didn't hate it. The rain outside grew louder. Minseo stared at the keycard. I don't want your pity, she whispered. Good, I'm not offering it. Then what are you offering? Kang Taejun looked at her for a long time. Then his gaze dropped to Jiho again. A place, he said quietly, for both of you. Minseo didn't use the keycard for 3 days. She kept it in her pocket during shifts, the plastic edge pressing against her hip like a question she didn't know how to answer. She went back to leaving Jiho with Mrs. Lim in the kitchen. She worked her hours. She stayed invisible. But on the 4th day, Mrs. Lim's arthritis flared so badly she could barely hold a spoon, and Minseo stood in the staff hallway at 5:30 in the evening with Jiho on her hip and no options left. She pulled out the keycard. The East Wing was empty when she arrived. The third door past the library opened with a soft click. Inside was a room she'd never seen before, medium-sized, carpeted in soft gray, with a small sofa, a changing table, and shelves stocked with diapers, wipes, blankets, and toys still in their packaging. A baby monitor sat on the side table. The window overlooked the garden. It looked like someone had ordered everything off a list, titled What a Baby Needs, without ever meeting one. Minseo stood in the doorway, Jiho babbling against her shoulder, and felt something complicated twist in her chest. She set Jiho down on the carpet. He immediately crawled toward a stuffed lamb, grabbed it, and shoved it in his mouth. She turned on the monitor, checked the locks twice, and left to start her shift. She cleaned 3 guest rooms and 2 bathrooms before the fear finally loosened its grip on her spine. When she returned an hour later, Jiho was exactly where she'd left him, surrounded by toys, grinning at his own reflection in the window. She did it again the next night, and the next. By the end of the week, it felt almost normal. Almost. Because every time she walked past Kang Taejun's office, she felt his presence like a weight in the air. She never saw him, but she knew he was there, knew he was aware of her, aware of Jiho. It should have scared her more than it did. On the 9th night, she was cleaning the hallway outside his office when the door opened. She froze, polish cloth in hand. Kang Taejun stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked at her for one long second, then walked past without a word. She exhaled. But he stopped 3 steps later. Is he here? She nodded before she could think better of it. Yes, sir. Show me. Her pulse spiked. He's sleeping. I don't want to. I won't wake him. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even a command. It was something worse. It was certainty. Minseo set down the cloth and led him to the childcare room. She unlocked the door as quietly as possible and stepped inside. The lamp in the corner glowed soft and warm. Jiho was asleep on the sofa, curled on his side, his lamb clutched to his chest. Kang Taejun stood in the doorway and looked at him. For a long time, he didn't move, didn't speak, just watched the baby sleep with an expression Minseo couldn't read. Then he stepped inside. Minseo's breath caught, but she didn't stop him. She didn't know how. Kang Taejun crossed the room and crouched beside the sofa. He was close enough to touch Jiho, but didn't. He just looked. His jaw was tight. His hands rested loose on his knees. He looks different when he sleeps, Kang Taejun said quietly. Most Bobbies do. No, not like this. Minseo frowned. Like what? Peaceful. He said the word like it was foreign, like he'd forgotten it existed. Jiho stirred, his face scrunching. one hand reaching out into empty air. Kang Taejun went very still. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. Jiho's fingers found his, wrapped around one, squeezed. And settled. Kang Taejun stared at their joined hands like he'd been struck. Minseo didn't breathe. "He trusts you," she whispered. Kang Taejun didn't answer, but something in his face shifted, something old and buried and dangerous. "He shouldn't." "Maybe," Minseo's voice was barely audible, "but he does." Kang Taejun stayed there for another 30 seconds. Then he carefully pulled his hand free, stood, and walked to the door. He stopped in the frame and looked back at her. "You're doing a good job," he said. She blinked. "With what?" "Him." And then he left. Minseo stood alone in the dim room, staring at the space where he'd been, her heart doing something complicated and foolish in her chest. The next afternoon, she was summoned again. This time, it was Lee who found her in the laundry room, his expression unreadable as always. "Mr. Kang wants to see you, immediately." Her stomach dropped. Did I do something wrong? He didn't say. She followed him through the estate, Jiho strapped to her chest in the carrier, his little hands patting her collarbone. They stopped outside a different room this time, one of the large sitting rooms on the second floor. Lee opened the door. Inside, Kang Taejun sat on a leather armchair near the window, a file open on his lap. He glanced up when she entered. His eyes went to Jiho first, then to her. "Sit." She sat on the sofa across from him. Jiho squirmed, and she adjusted him so he could see the room. Kang Taejun closed the file and set it aside. "You've been here 3 months," he said. "Yes, sir." "Your contract ends in 9. She nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "I'm extending it." Her breath hitched. "I thank you, 2 years, full benefits, private quarters in the North Wing. Larger, better." Minseo stared at him. "Why?" "Because you're efficient, discreet, and you don't ask questions." "I'm asking one now." Something almost like amusement flickered across his face. Almost. "You are. So why?" Kang Taejun leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze locking onto hers. "Because he needs stability," he said quietly. "And you need security. I can provide the latter, you provide the former." "You mean Ji?" "Yes." "You're doing this for him." "I'm doing this because it makes sense." That's not an answer. Kang Taejun's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might get angry, but he didn't. He just looked at Jiho, who was chewing on his fist and staring at the chandelier above them with wide, fascinated eyes. "He grabbed my hand," Kang Taejun said. "Twice now, both times he didn't let go." "He's a baby, that's what they do." "No," his voice dropped. "It's not." Minseo frowned. "What do you mean?" Kang Taejun was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "Most people pull away from me. Children, adults, animals, they sense something, they know better. And Jiho doesn't." "No. Maybe he's too young to know better." "Or maybe," Kang Taejun said, his eyes meeting hers, "he sees something they don't." The air in the room changed, grew heavier. Minseo held his gaze. "And what's that?" Kang Taejun didn't answer right away. He looked at Jiho again, his expression unreadable, and when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone who won't let him fall." Minseo's chest tightened. Before she could respond, Jiho made a loud, happy sound and reached both hands toward Kang Taejun, his whole body leaning forward in the carrier. Kang Taejun went still. "Can I?" he said quietly. Minseo blinked. "Can you what?" "Hold him." Her heart stopped, then started again too fast. She looked at Kang Taejun, this man whose name people whispered, whose presence cleared rooms, whose reputation was built on control and consequence. And she saw the way he was looking at her son. Like Jiho was something precious, something breakable, something worth protecting. She unstrapped the carrier. "Support his head," she said softly. Kang Taejun stood and crossed to her. He took Jiho carefully, his hands large and sure, and lifted him against his chest. Jiho grabbed his collar immediately, babbling nonsense, his face breaking into a wide, drooly grin. Kang Taejun looked down at him. And for the first time since Minseo had met him, Kang Taejun smiled. It was small, barely there. But it was real. The first threat came on a Tuesday. Minseo was folding linens in the supply room when she heard raised voices in the corridor outside. Sharp, tense, wrong. She set down the towel and moved to the door, cracking it open just enough to see. 3 men stood near the executive staircase. 2 wore suits she didn't recognize. The third was Mr. Beek, Kang Taejun's second-in-command, a man with silver hair and a scar across his knuckles who moved through the estate like a knife through water. "He's distracted," one of the strangers said. His voice carried an accent she couldn't place. "Soft, your people are noticing." "Careful," Beek said quietly. "I'm not wrong. Kang Taejun doesn't take days off. He doesn't rearrange meetings. He doesn't." "He does what he wants," Beek interrupted. "And if you're smart, you won't question it." The stranger laughed, but it was ugly. "We've worked with him for 6 years. This is new, and new makes people nervous, especially when there's a woman involved." Minseo's blood went cold. "There's no woman," Beek said. "Then what's in the north wing?" Silence. Minseo's fingers tightened on the doorframe. "A personal matter," Beek said finally. "Not your concern." "Everything's my concern when it affects business. If Kang's compromised." "He's not." "Then prove it, or we take our concerns elsewhere." The 2 strangers turned and walked toward the main entrance. Beek stood alone in the corridor for a long moment, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Minseo closed the door. Her heart was racing. She knew what she'd heard, knew what it meant. She'd made Kang Taejun visible. And in his world, visibility was danger. That night, she didn't take Jiho to the childcare room. She kept him in her quarters, the door locked, the lights off. She sat on the bed with him in her lap and tried to think. She could leave, pack their things, disappear before this got worse. But she had nowhere to go, no money saved yet, no references she could use. And Jiho was safe here, fed, warm, protected. Until now. A soft knock sounded at her door. She froze. Jiho made a questioning sound against her chest. "It's me." Kang Taejun's voice, low, calm. She didn't move. "Minseo, open the door." She stood slowly, crossed the room, and unlocked it. Kang Taejun stepped inside without waiting for permission. He closed the door behind him and looked at her, at Jiho, then back at her. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "How much?" "Enough." His jaw tightened. He moved to the window, hands in his pockets, his silhouette sharp against the glass. "They think you're a weakness," he said quietly. "I know. They're wrong." "Are they?" He turned to face her. His eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "I don't have weaknesses," he said. "I have priorities, there's a difference." "And what am I?" "You're not the priority." The words should have hurt, but the way he looked at Jiho when he said them made something else clear. "He is," Minseo whispered. Kang Taejun didn't deny it. She sank onto the edge of the bed, Jiho squirming in her arms. Her mind was spinning. "You need to distance yourself from us," she said. "Before this gets worse, before they—" "No. You don't understand. If they think you're compromised. Let them think it. They'll come after him. They'll try." Minseo's breath caught. That's not good enough. Kang Taejun crossed the room in 3 strides and crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. When he spoke, his voice was steel. "No one touches him, do you understand? No one gets close, not those men, not anyone." "You can't promise that." "I don't make promises I can't keep." She stared at him, at the certainty in his face, the cold, absolute conviction. "Why?" she whispered. Why does he matter so much to you? Kang Taejun was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out slowly, carefully, and brushed his thumb across Jiho's cheek. The baby turned toward the touch, grinning, and grabbed his hand. Because he's the first thing in 10 years that didn't look at me like I was a monster, Kang Taejun said quietly. Minseo's throat tightened. He doesn't know what you are. No, he doesn't. Kang Taejun's gaze didn't leave Jiho's face, and I'd like to keep it that way as long as possible. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen, and stood. Stay here tonight, he said. Don't leave this room. I'll have Lee posted outside. Where are you going? To remind certain people why they don't question me. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. He'll be safe, Minseo. I'll make sure of it. And then he was gone. Minseo sat alone in the dark with Jiho in her arms, listening to the rain outside and the sound of her son's soft breathing. She didn't sleep. At 3 a.m, she heard voices in the hall. Low, tense, then silence. At dawn, Lee knocked softly and told her it was safe to come out. She opened the door. What happened? Lee's expression was unreadable. The 2 men from yesterday won't be a problem anymore. What does that mean? It means Mr. Kang handled it. How? Lee looked at her for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, You don't want to know. He was right, she didn't. But later that morning, when she passed Kang Taejun in the corridor, she saw it. The faint bruising on his knuckles, the tension in his shoulders, the cold, distant look in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He didn't stop, didn't speak. But as he walked past, Ji, strapped to her chest, reached out and made a happy sound. Kang Taejun paused, just for a second. Then kept walking. That afternoon, a new set of security protocols went into effect. Cameras in the north wing, restricted access to her floor, a second guard posted near the childcare room at all times. And that night, when she put Jiho to bed, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a keycard, a new one, for Kang Taejun's private residence. The card attached to it had 3 words written in clean, precise handwriting. If you need me. Minseo stood in her small room, the keycard in her hand, and realized something she'd been avoiding for weeks. Kang Taejun wasn't just protecting Jiho. He was claiming him. And her. And she didn't know if that terrified her or made her feel safer than she'd ever been. 2 days later, the second threat arrived. It didn't come with voices or strangers in the hall. It came with silence. Mrs. Lim found Minseo in the kitchen during her break and pulled her aside, her face pale. There's talk, the older woman whispered, downstairs in the staff quarters. What kind of talk? About you, about the baby, about Mr. Kang. She gripped Minseo's arm. They're saying he's changing, that you've made him weak, that people outside are noticing. Minseo's stomach turned. Who's saying this? Everyone. That's not an answer. Mrs. Lim's eyes were frightened. You need to be careful, dear. When powerful men change, other powerful men get nervous. And when they get nervous... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. That night, Minseo stood in the childcare room, watching Jiho sleep, and made a decision. She couldn't leave. But she couldn't stay hidden either. If Kang Taejun was willing to protect them, she needed to understand what that protection cost. And what it meant. She picked up Jiho, wrapped him carefully, and walked through the silent corridors to Kang Taejun's office. The door was closed. She knocked. Come in. She stepped inside. Kang Taejun sat at his desk, reading something on his computer. He looked up, saw her, and went still. It's late, he said. I know. He should be sleeping. He is. She gestured to Jiho, peaceful against her shoulder. I need to ask you something. Kang Taejun leaned back in his chair, waited. What happens, she said quietly, if they don't stop? They will. But if they don't? His eyes darkened. Then I make an example. Of who? Whoever needs to learn. Mincio swallowed. And us, what happens to us? Kang Tijun stood, walked around the desk, stopped in front of her. You stay safe, he said. That's what happens. For how long? As long as I'm breathing. The certainty in his voice was terrifying. And comforting. Both at once. Jiho stirred and lifted his head, blinking sleepily at Kang Tijun. Then he smiled and reached for him. Kang Tijun took him without hesitation this time, held him close, looked down at his face like he was memorizing it. I won't let anything happen to him, he said quietly. I know, Mincio whispered. Or to you. She looked up at him. Why me? Kang Tijun met her eyes. Because he needs you, he said. And I need him safe, which means you stay safe too. It wasn't love. It wasn't even affection. It was something colder, sharper. Strategy. But when Jiho grabbed Kang Tijun's collar and laughed, and Kang Tijun's expression softened just slightly, Mincio wondered if maybe that was enough. The man in the gray coat arrived on a Thursday. Mincio was in the East Wing library, dusting the shelves while Jiho played on a blanket near the window, when she heard the commotion downstairs. Raised voices. The sharp sound of the front door slamming. Then footsteps, many of them moving fast through the main hall. She set down the duster and moved to the doorway, her pulse already accelerating. Lee appeared at the end of the corridor, his face tight. Stay in your room, he said. Now. What's happening? Not your concern. Go. But before she could move, another voice cut through the air, smooth, cultured wrong. Where is he? Mincio froze. A man stepped into view at the base of the grand staircase. Tall, older, 50 maybe. His coat was expensive, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, his hair silver and perfectly styled. He looked like money and power and patience that had run out. Behind him stood 4 men in suits. Not security, something else, something harder. Kang Tijun appeared on the landing above them, descending the stairs with the kind of calm that made the air feel thin. He didn't hurry, didn't speak, just walked down until he stood 3 steps above the man in the gray coat. The height difference was intentional. Mr. Han, Kang Tijun said quietly, you didn't call ahead. Han smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. I didn't think I needed to. We're partners after all. We're associates. Semantics. Han's gaze moved past Kang Tijun, scanning the room. I heard an interesting rumor, thought I'd see for myself. I'm not interested in rumors. Not even ones about you going soft. The temperature in the room dropped. Kang Tijun didn't move, didn't blink, but something in his posture shifted, and Mincio saw Han's men tense. Careful, Kang Tijun said. Han laughed. It was a cold, calculated sound. 6 years, Tijun. 6 years we've worked together. You've always been reliable, predictable. And now, he gestured vaguely, now you're rescheduling meetings, turning down contracts, spending your evenings in the North Wing instead of your office. My schedule is my concern. Not when it affects our business. Nothing has changed. Then prove it. Kang Tijun tilted his head slightly. How? Han's smile widened. The sole deal, 3 days, you've been stalling for 2 weeks. Sign it, tonight. Show me you're still the man I know. And if I don't? Then I'll assume the rumors are true, that you found something more important than our arrangement, and I'll have to reconsider our partnership. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Kang Tijun stared at him. Then, slowly, he descended the final 3 steps until they were level. Get out of my house, he said quietly. Han's expression didn't change, but his eyes went cold. You're making a mistake. I don't make mistakes. Everyone does, eventually. Han's gaze drifted past Kang Tijun again, and this time it lingered on the 2nd floor, on the corridor where Mincio stood hidden in the doorway. Her blood went ice cold. Han looked back at Kang Tijun. I'll give you 48 hours. After that, we're done. And when we're done, he paused, I take what I'm owed. He turned and walked toward the door, his men following. At the threshold, he stopped and glanced back. Nice place you have here, he said. Very homey. Then he left. The door closed. The silence was deafening. Kang Taejun stood alone in the foyer, his hands loose at his sides, his expression unreadable. Then he turned and looked directly at the spot where Minseo was standing. She stepped out slowly, Jiho in her arms. Go to my residence, Kang Taejun said. Use the key card, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Lee. What's happening? I'm ending this. How? His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something like regret there. The way I should have from the start. He walked past her without another word. Minseo stood frozen for 5 seconds. Then she ran. She didn't go to Kang Taejun's residence. She went to her own room, grabbed the emergency bag she'd packed weeks ago out of habit and poverty, and held Jiho close. Her hands shook as she tried to think. Han had seen her, maybe not clearly, but enough. And men like him didn't make empty threats. She should leave, right now, before this became something she couldn't escape. But when she looked down at Jiho, his tiny hand curled around her finger, his face peaceful and trusting, she thought about Kang Taejun's voice in her room 2 nights ago. I don't make promises I can't keep. She took a breath and made a choice. She went to his residence. The space was larger than she'd expected, minimalist. Clean lines and dark colors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate grounds. She locked the door behind her, checked every window, and sat on the sofa with Jiho in her lap. She waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. At midnight, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Stay inside, no matter what you hear. Her throat tightened. At 1 in the morning, she heard it. Gunfire. Distant, outside, 3 sharp cracks that echoed across the grounds. Jiho woke and started to cry. She held him close, rocking him, whispering nonsense until he settled. Then silence. At 2 in the morning, footsteps sounded in the corridor outside. Heavy, multiple people. She held her breath. A keycard beeped, the door opened. Kang Taejun stepped inside. His shirt was untucked, his knuckles were split. There was blood on his collar, not his, she thought, but she couldn't be sure. He saw her on the sofa and stopped. You're okay, he said. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He crossed the room and crouched in front of her, his eyes scanning her face, then Jiho's. The baby had fallen back asleep, his face pressed against her chest. It's done, Kang Taejun said quietly. What's done? Han, his men, the problem. Minseo's stomach turned. What did you do? What I had to. That's not an answer. Kang Taejun looked at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and deliberate. Han came here to threaten me, to use you and Jiho as leverage. He thought I'd cave, sign his deal, give him control. He paused. He was wrong. So you killed him. I removed the threat. That's the same thing. Yes. The word was so calm it hurt. Minseo stared at him, at this man who had held her son so carefully, who had smiled when Jiho grabbed his hand, who had given them safety and space and something that almost felt like belonging. This man who had just killed people to protect them. You're not afraid, Kang Taejun said. It wasn't a question. I should be. But you're not. She looked down at Jiho, then back at Kang Taejun. No, she whispered, I'm not. Something shifted in his expression, something raw. You should be, he said quietly. I'm not a good man, Minseo. I know. I've done things you can't imagine. I know. And I'll do worse if anyone comes for him again. I know. Kang Taejun stared at her. Then he reached out, slowly, like he was afraid she'd pull away and touch Jiho's hair. Just once. Just a soft brush of his fingers. He deserves better than this, Kang Taejun said. Better than what? Me. Minseo's chest ached. She shifted Jiho slightly and reached out, her hand covering Kang Taejun's where it rested on the sofa. He trusts you, she said quietly. He sees you and smiles, he reaches for you, he feels safe when you're near. She paused. That's not nothing. It's dangerous. Maybe, but it's also real. Kang Taejun looked at their hands, then at Jiho, then at her. I can't promise you normal, he said. I'm not asking for normal. I can't promise you safe. You already have. His jaw tightened. Mincio. You gave me a room for him. You extended my contract. You put guards outside my door. Her voice cracked. You just killed people to protect us. Don't tell me you can't promise safety when you've already given it. Kang Taejun was silent, then quietly, what do you want from me? She looked at him, really looked at him, at the blood on his collar, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he held himself like he was bracing for her to run. I want you to stop waiting for me to leave, she said. His breath caught. I want you to stop thinking you're a monster when you're the reason my son sleeps through the night now. The reason I don't have to choose between feeding him and paying rent. The reason I feel safe for the first time in 2 years. Kang Taejun stared at her. You're dangerous, she whispered. I know that, but you're dangerous for us, not to us, there's a difference. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them again, the distance was gone. Stay, he said quietly. Here, this residence, both of you. He looked at Jiho. I can protect you better if you're close. And if more people come. They won't. How do you know? His eyes met hers, and they were colder than she'd ever seen them. Because after tonight, he said, everyone will know what happens when someone threatens what's mine. The word hung between them. Mine. Mincio should have been terrified. But when Jiho stirred and made a soft sound, and Kang Taejun's expression softened instantly, she realized something. She wasn't his prisoner. She was his priority. And in his world, that meant she was untouchable. Okay, she whispered. Kang Taejun looked at her. Okay. We'll stay. Something like relief crossed his face. He nodded once, then stood and moved toward the door. There's a bedroom through there, he said, gesturing. It's yours, take whatever you need. I'll have your things moved in the morning. Where will you be? Here, on the sofa. You don't have to. Yes, he said quietly, I do. And she understood. He wasn't guarding the door. He was guarding them. She carried Jiho to the bedroom, tucked him into the center of the massive bed surrounded by pillows, and lay beside him. Through the open door, she could see Kang Taejun on the sofa, his head tipped back, his eyes closed but his body tense. Still on watch. Still protecting them. Even now. 3 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Mincio stopped cleaning the estate. Kang Taejun didn't ask, he simply reassigned her duties and doubled her salary. Her new role, he said, was managing the private wing, which meant staying close, being available, keeping Jiho safe within walls he controlled. She didn't argue. The residence became theirs. She learned which floorboards creaked, which windows caught the morning light, where Kang Taejun kept his coffee and his weapons and the first aid kit he refilled every week but never explained why. Jiho learned to pull himself up on furniture. He babbled constantly now, strings of sounds that almost made sense. And every evening, when Kang Taejun returned from wherever he went during the day, Jiho would crawl to him at full speed, laughing, arms outstretched. And every evening, Kang Taejun would crouch and let him come. He never smiled wide, never laughed, but something in his face would shift, something careful and private and almost tender, and he'd lift Jiho like the baby weighed nothing and carry him to the window to watch the garden lights come on. Mincio would watch from the kitchen, her chest tight, and wonder how this had become her life. On the 23rd day, everything changed again. She was folding laundry in the bedroom when she heard voices in the main room. Not angry, not threatening, but tense. She stepped into the doorway and saw Beek standing near the sofa, his arms crossed, his face grim. Kang Taejun stood by the window, his back to both of them, his shoulders tight. They're asking questions, Beek said quietly. Not just our people, the families in Busan, the suppliers in Incheon, words spreading that you've changed, that you're, he hesitated, distracted. I'm not. Then explain the last 3 weeks. I don't owe anyone an explanation. You owe them predictability, stability. You've built your reputation on being untouchable, unreachable. And now, Beek gestured toward the hallway where Jiho's toys were scattered. Now you have a weak point. He's not a weak point. To you, maybe. To them, he's leverage. Kang Taejun turned slowly. His expression was carved from stone. Let them try. Beek exhaled. Taejun, you can't protect them and run this operation. Not the way you have been. Something has to give. Nothing gives. Then you need to make a choice. The silence stretched. Mincio stepped forward before she could stop herself. What kind of choice? Both men looked at her. Beek's face registered surprise. Kang Taejun's didn't change. This doesn't concern you, Beek said. It does if you're talking about my son. Beek glanced at Kang Taejun, who said nothing. The organization needs visible leadership, Beek said finally. Kang can't do that from here. He needs to be seen, needs to reassert control, and he can't do that if he's babysitting. Mincio's voice was sharp. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Kang Taejun moved then, crossing the room in 3 strides until he stood between them. Enough, he said quietly, to Beek. I'll handle it. To Mincio, we'll talk later. Beek left without another word. Mincio stood alone with Kang Taejun in the center of the room, her heart racing. He's right, she said. He's not. You can't keep doing this, splitting yourself in half. Something's going to break. Nothing will break. You don't know that. Kang Taejun looked at her for a long moment. Then he crossed to the sofa and sat, his elbows on his knees, his head bowed. She'd never seen him like this, never seen him uncertain. She sat beside him, not too close, but close enough. Tell me the truth, she said quietly. What happens if you choose us? I lose control, lose respect, lose the organization. And if you choose them? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough. I lose the only thing I've cared about in 10 years. Her breath caught. Kang Taejun turned his head and looked at her, really looked at her. I don't know how to do this, he said. How to be what he needs and what they need. I've spent my entire life being one thing, and now, he stopped. Now I don't want to be that thing anymore. Mincio's throat burned. Then don't. It's not that simple. Isn't it? He stared at her. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand that Jiho reaches for you every night, that he falls asleep faster when you're in the room, that he laughs when you're near. She paused. I understand that you're the first person I've trusted in 2 years, and I understand that if you walk away now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Kang Taejun's jaw clenched. They'll come for you, he said quietly. If I step back, if I show weakness, they'll come for both of you to prove a point. Then don't step back, just, she struggled for the words. Just stop pretending you don't care. Stop hiding us. Stop acting like we're something you have to protect in secret. Make them see that we're not a weakness. We're a line they can't cross. He went very still. You want me to claim you? I want you to stop apologizing for wanting us safe. Kang Taejun stared at her. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm, rough, scarred. If I do this, he said quietly, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to my world, to everything that comes with it. I know. You'll be a target. I already am. It'll be worse. I don't care. His grip tightened. Why? Mincio looked at him. This man who had given them everything, who had killed for them, who held her son like he was made of glass and dreams. Because Jiho needs a father, she said quietly, and I think you need him just as much. Kang Taejun's breath hitched. Before he could respond, a soft cry came from the bedroom. Jiho waking from his nap. Mincio started to stand, but Kang Taejun moved first. He crossed to the bedroom, and she followed, watching from the doorway as he lifted Jiho from the bed. The baby was crying, his face red and scrunched, but the moment Kang Taejun held him, he quieted. His little hands grabbed Kang Taejun's shirt, his face pressed into his shoulder. And Kang Taejun closed his eyes and held him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. When he opened them again, Minseo saw something there she'd never seen before. Decision. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "I'm calling a meeting. Everyone, all the families, all the associates." "Why?" "Because I'm making something clear." He looked down at Jiho, then at her. "You're mine, both of you, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." Minseo's heart stopped, then started again too fast. "That's dangerous." "I know. They might retaliate." "They might," his eyes met hers, "but they won't succeed." She believed him. The next evening, Kang Taejun dressed in a black suit, checked his gun twice, and kissed Jiho's forehead before he left. Minseo stayed in the residence with Lee and 3 other guards outside the door. She didn't sleep. At midnight, her phone buzzed. "It's done." That was all. But when Kang Taejun returned an hour later, his knuckles were bruised and his eyes were hard, but he was smiling. "What happened?" she asked. "I told them the truth." "Which is?" He crossed to her and cupped her face in his hands. "That I'm done pretending I don't have something worth protecting, that you and Jiho are off limits, that anyone who even looks at you wrong will answer to me." He paused. "And that if they can't accept that, they can find another partnership." "And what did they say?" His smile widened, just a fraction. "They accepted it." Minseo exhaled. Kang Taejun pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "You were right," he said quietly. "I was apologizing, hiding, pretending this didn't matter." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "It matters, you matter, he matters." "And them. They matter less." She laughed. It was shaky and breathless and real. Kang Taejun kissed her then. Soft, deliberate, a promise. When he pulled back, Jiho's voice echoed from the bedroom, a happy, babbling sound. They both smiled. And for the first time since she'd crawled into that interview 3 months ago, desperate and exhausted and alone, Minseo felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. She felt like she belonged. Not in the estate. Not in the residence. But here, with him, with them. In the space they'd built between danger and safety, between fear and trust, between the man everyone else saw and the man who crouched for her son every single night. Kang Taejun lifted Jiho from his crib, the baby immediately grabbing his face and laughing. And Minseo watched the most dangerous man she'd ever met hold her son like he was the most precious thing in the world. Because he was. And somehow, impossibly, she was too. The black maid's baby had crawled into the Korean Mafia boss's office. And then, inch by inch, heartbeat by heartbeat, he'd crawled into his heart. And nothing, no threat, no rival, no empire, would ever make Kang Taejun let him go.